still available. Don't think it should be picked in first round, but maybe when it gets to 3-pick, we see probably C9 going for it.
What I'm most curious about here is if CLG is going to opt to take Sion again 1-2, or if they're going to go back to Dhokla playing those more split push type of champions.
This would be wild if it's a first pick. So the only difference from the game 1 draft and bans was Draven is not banned, Heimerdinger is. Varus was the first pick the first time for C9.
A Pantheon hover, we're not going to see it. I've been wanting to see Pantheon from a specific LPL jungler who was spamming it, but I don't think we're going to see that pick.
Yeah. Instead, I like the Rakan hover. I think we're probably going to see Rakan Jayce. Oh, Sion.
I mean, are they just going to slam Sion Sylas here? Probably the jungler, they can take Sylas later. If Palafox still thinks you just only need to see Maokai ult before you take Sylas, which felt like the theory in the first game.
We've been seeing a lot of solo lanes being slammed early with Sion, like with mid and top. This is probably one of those examples. Is that something that you think is good? No, it's not actually being locked in here.
It's interesting to me because I think going into the series and looking at the All-Pro and just even tracking the year, people kind of expected C9 to just demolish CLG in laning phase if they're going to win. So you'd think blind picking solo lanes would be a disaster, but it actually hasn't been. Like, that's the biggest surprise of me so far this series, is that CLG is sticking with C9 in the early game.
Yeah, I think Sion is a pick we've been seeing picked 1-2 more and more often. I think people are finally starting to realize having a tank is
good.
Really good. And it's very easy to play with. And then for mid lane, you can usually just pair it with a strong jungler. So if you see like a strong jungle pick, like a Lee Sin or Vi or something, you can usually like pair any mid pick with CC with it. That's usually pretty good.
This is an interesting pivot from C9 because typically, like we've talked about previously, and as we saw in their first 2 drafts, they went for more like, we want bot side prio always and forever. And then now they're defaulting to the Zeri, in turn taking it away from CLG.
Yeah.
And obviously, Luger Zeri looked pretty scary in the past game, but it was also, I mean, CLG were kind of winning out when the teams were going 5v5 a lot of times in that first game as well. So that's an interesting pick away.
And this is the Jayce 3 pick that I was looking for. The one thing that I would love C9 to have, but they don't have the option for, is like getting Lulu on 4-5. It's going to be first pick from CLG when they get that, so it's either going to be banned or I think they're going to pick it away from them. Thresh is another option. I think the most common one that we saw in the 100 Thieves series is Jinx Thresh as a duo. It just makes it so much easier to reposition her in fights, especially in fights like this where C9 already has the Jayce. They're probably going to go for another like flanking option in their top lane. So let's see what they end up going for. But support should be the focus.
Yeah, I mean,
Rush ban coming out.
It's really crazy how much Zeri is locked to Lulu.
Yeah.
Second most was Yuumi, which is obviously not pickable. And then the third most common support pairing with Zeri is actually Rakan.
Yeah, we've been seeing more Rakan.
Interesting.
But it's like 78 Rakan games to 485 Lulu games compared to for Games of Legends, so it's way down the list. You'd expect that last ban to be a Lulu ban by CLG.
Go, Jensen.
Yeah, oh, wow, I'm surprised they left Lulu open here, but I think another pick that could work very well for C9 is actually Soraka. I think Soraka is very underrated right now, especially with a hybrid carry.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. They can play fights front to back if they end up having that, too, with the Maokai.
Yeah, I actually really like that mention. Oh, and they're banning Liss, which means they could also be going for a Veigar pick as well.
Oh yeah, Jensen, give us your thoughts on Veigar. You gave him to us earlier. Is it good here or is not the play?
I think CLG probably don't want to pick it right here. I think for C9, it's not too bad to play Veigar, but it's not the best either. Oh, there it is.
And yeah, here's you called it.
I mean,
you called it, you got it.
CLG leaves the Lulu up because they can just take it with Jinx as a denial, and then for the 14th time in 1,000 Zeri games, we might be seeing a Soraka. Nope, not yet. Not yet, we'll see.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
About time.
Jensen, how did you know?
I actually carried Berserker in bot lane.
Nice.
So I'm sure he told Sven, he was like, wow, Jensen's so good at Soraka, we should play it.
Yes, Soraka's so
And now he's going to be like, wow, Sven, like, Jensen is much better at Soraka than you. What is this?
Yeah.
Gragas has been something that they've been hovering, but I know I'm thinking it could just be a Gragas mid instead as a blind and put the Jayce top lane. Both matchups versus Sion is a little tough. You usually pick Sion into Jayce, and you're much better in a Sion matchup versus Gragas, so lane's just going to be pretty good for Dhokla, it feels like.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where C9 is planning on putting this Gragas. I would assume mid, because I don't think you just pick Gragas into Sion. That doesn't sound like the best.
Oh!
There you go. There's
There it is.
Veigar. This is super interesting because we pointed out how willing we thought CLG were able to swap between their solo laners, but that's kind of been a staple of C9 in these drafts as well, and it's just a matter of how teams are going to pay attention to their lane assignments to get the lanes they want.
Yeah. Which draft do you prefer here, Jensen?
I like C9's draft, but I think both teams have pretty good drafts this time. You know, they're both scaling really, really well. I'm just curious if Fudge is going to go for like more of a tanky build, or if he's just going to slam full AP.
Yeah, well, we know the Veigar is going to be fairly tanky if he goes the Rod of Ages, Saris build, but that'll do it from us at the lounge. CLG with yet.
Both of these teams, Cloud9 and CLG, coming into it, there were so many predictions for a sweep, but here we are, 1-1 in the series.
1-1 in the series, in a dogfight. I made a tweet about it. It's the only team in playoffs with 5 All-Pro with C9, going up against the only team with 0 All-Pro votes in playoffs. Interesting that it has been so close, even game 1. 1-1.
You don't say.
I have my tongue firmly planted in cheek as I say this. It's funny because I think both teams think that I'm a hater or like fans of them. C9 because I've had more contentious all-pro votes myself. CLG just because I never believe in this team. So I am enjoying this just from a competitive perspective. I have no dog in the fight, so to speak, but I have a lot of memes to make about no matter what happens this series.
But I feel like whenever we hear from members of CLG, they want to be the underdogs and they get mad if you start believing in them. You know, ThinkHard was tweeting out specifically before this about, oh, I would hate for all the analysts to pick C9 again to win against us. Definitely don't want this to happen, and kind of using that fuel as the underdogs in the matchup.
Yeah, but don't start believing too soon, CLG fans. We all know that you can start having faith too early in them, so don't do that quite yet. But I will say, like, if I'm going to make takes that might not age well, here's one for you. People always talk about late game teams being one-dimensional, that they can only play this late game style, blah, blah, blah. C9 has opted very heavily into an early game style, and in the games where they don't get early game leads, they fall apart sometimes. There's a question of, if this team doesn't snowball, how good are they going to be? We'll have to see. Maybe this take ages poorly, but CLG has done a good job hanging with them in these games. I think the game 1, you remember, it ended with like a weird TP through the front door because they were about to get Elder for CLG. You know, C9 had to kind of out-scrap them in that really weird way, but game 2 was just, yeah, it was close, and you know, C9 got an early lead, but CLG was much better in the mid to late game fights there. So I think there's a case to be made that, you know, if CLG weathers these storms, they're actually maybe favored in the mid to late game, especially with the way that they're drafting as well.
And I think you have to think not just about expectations based on standings, performance throughout the split, but kind of where those windows are for a team to stand strong. Looking at CLG against Cloud9, multiple interviews, whether it's Dhokla when talking to Travis, acknowledging where they can improve, and that if they do clean these aspects up, they can really be a strong threat in playoffs. Contractz, same in his Dgon interview, talking about that they have such faith in themselves to be that dog that can apply the pressure like they're doing in the mid lane right now onto EMENES.
Nice last second sidestep by EMENES there to not take the W damage or get stunned. Is the only reason he's alive. I'm pretty sure if they landed that W or he got stunned up, can probably find that kill, but still a really nice trade by Palafox and Contractz there to chunk him out. Didn't have to use any of their own resources either. Getting some pressure and breathing room for Palafox to start farming up on this Veigar.
And when speaking about the fact that Cloud9 have 5 members in All-Pro and CLG have no presence, Palafox is the first one to often come up in discussion as somebody that was put on a lot of people's ballots. So seeing him here on the Veigar and how he can perform on the pick against Cloud9 and have that pressure up in the mid lane.
Yeah, they're an insanely scrappy team. You know, the All-Pro vote doesn't tell the whole story, but it does give a semblance of a David versus Goliath here for CLG if they're able to take them down. They were very close in summer last year, which we hit on. They were the closest team to actually beating C9 in that entire playoff run. And they just seem to have something about how much they're willing to fight while having their own unique approach on the game. I think last game, Luger as well, as we see a gank coming in from Blaber. Just gonna scare them off a little bit. But yeah, Luger in that last team fight just hopping in over and over again. You know, despite how dicey it looked, having the Bloodthirster to heal up, having the ultimate from Poome as well, who was on the same page about that aggressive playstyle, they're not gonna back down the way I think that when we were talking to Jensen about when teams are juggernauts, that sometimes people play scared, and that can feel good. I think CLG is a team that never plays scared, and that can kind of hit them in the mouth a little bit against C9, who are not used to teams maybe fighting them every step of the way.
Contractz not looking scared in this attempted gank down bot, flashing away from the Cloud9 side, and first blood getting an advantage over to CLG.
Some big brain alcove gaming by Contractz. They're able to use the Fog of War plus the W stealth to end up just on top of Zven. So when he flashes away, he still has the E up from Wukong to follow, red buff slow. You also have Ghost Flash from Luger, who could use his Ghost to get in range and not actually need to flash follow up.
Attempt by Cloud9 to make somewhat of an answer over on the mid side, but Palafox keeping hold of his flash.
Yeah, keeping hold of his flash, but also already TP back to lane once. A little bit of a dicey setup there in lane. We'll take a look at that again in a second. But first, here's that alcove that we're talking about. They're also able to sweep this ward out, so while it's turned off, they don't see him coming in. There you go. Of course, also was stealthed up from the Wukong W. Just such a clean little execution there by CLG. Made it look easy.
The immediacy of the response from Cloud9 still not strong enough to offset that gank, and all the while on the top side, Fudge now seeing the anger that Contractz can bring through lane, and luckily steps close enough to the turret to keep safe.
Yeah, looking for maybe if there was any way where Fudge was going to overextend, they can find that kill. I think Dhokla's Q was down. The thing that I was worried about in mid lane a little bit was the CS lead that's opening up, the fact that already Palafox has lost his flash, or excuse me, teleport, and then EMENES had the wave kind of on his side of the map. But of course, you're expecting this to go in Jayce's favor early on. Palafox, no joke in the late game. He was well known for his Aurelian Soul in the regular season, but Veigar kind of feels that similar early on. You're just trying to get stacks of, you know, your Q farming, get that up and ready to go so you can start just blowing people up 1v1. I think yesterday was like a 980 AP Veigar in that series for Vikla. Like, it can be pretty gross.
And as soon as Veigar gets built up to that point where a lockdown by Event Horizon is all you need to know that you're getting bursted down as a member of Cloud9, that's something that they will be wary about onto the later stages of the game.
And you see CLG kind of respecting the fact that Palafox is the pressure point for the enemy team here for CLG. That first gank relieves one pressure point so that CLG has now control of the bot lane, and they're able to move up and kind of rotate and try and protect Palafox, who is, I think, the most exposed in this early game for C9 aggression.
Farm even over on a bot side, and then Palafox keeping himself in it in this matchup against EMENES, and the response from CLG to ensure he's able to do so. All the while, Fudge and Dhokla left alone up top, and we know that Cloud9, when having Berserker on a pick like Zeri, you are hoping that regardless of what happens in the lane itself, this is a threat to be had later on in the game. So Contractz wanting to nullify that as much as possible with a second attempt down here on the bot side.
Yeah, looking back down here again, gonna drop a pink ward after his sweeper timed out. Gonna get spotted out. Blaber in here to cover, but just putting some pressure down the bot side, keep farming up. Instantly cleared out by C9 there. And to the Berserker point, like you're saying, he's been playing the more aggressive laning style recently, but actually when he debuted in the LCS, he was more of a late game ticking time bomb on things like Aphelios and Jinx and these kinds of things. So kind of reverting back to a little bit more with the Zeri. He's gotten a number of pentakills himself, if I'm not mistaken, in the LCS. Here we go, Drake fight though.
Zven and Blaber from the bot side. EMENES here in Pixel Brush, and Palafox going for that Event Horizon to completely get the burn down. Mid lane for Cloud9, blasted away. The Dragon looking to fall soon. Who's going to be the one to take it? Blaber going for it and gets it. Flashes out of the back of the pit to stay safe.
A nice steal by Blaber to salvage what was otherwise a bit of a disaster play for C9 there. The EMENES Jayce losing his mind a little bit to walk forward for a shock blast on the Luger just sets him up for an easy cage by Palafox. Very nicely done by CLG, 2-0 in the league, up 500 gold already with what should be, I think, in my eyes, a scaling advantage in their draft. So they're chilling. They don't care if they lose one dragon. Of course, you would want that in your favor. It would be much better to have, but it's really not the end of the world in a bit of a just small, nice play by Blaber.
Ooh, Poome taking a decent amount of damage there. But that is one way for Cloud9 to try and pull back some of that pressure from CLG, getting these initial kills and ensuring that they don't get that dragon as a reward as well.
Yeah, so here you see it. I mean, there's no way that EMENES doesn't know that he's going to be in that brush. The fact that it's swept and turned off means that you're about to get caged, and just really over-aggressive by him to step forward to try and land some shock blast poke onto the bot lane there. Gets stunned up by Palafox. Poome with an aggressive flashing knight on top of it to finish him off. And then Blaber with just a nice W in, run out. Silence kind of comboed with Zven to make sure that they maybe didn't have some spells to kill him in the afterwards. C9 doing what they usually do though with really high tempo. Blaber off the reset getting that one. He's been up farm, I believe, all 3 games, so he's done a good job of kind of keeping his paths efficient. And I think Contractz is, as a player, a little bit less efficiency-minded. He wants to find ways to heavily impact the game early on. His Sejuani was disgusting in Week 9 versus C9 for that reason. Or excuse me, Week 8. And then again here, this series has been very proactive, usually trying to find kills immediately.
Multiple times spending attention on the bot side, even ventured over top in case Fudge had overextended. Very contrast to Blaber on the Maokai, once again setting up the saplings around these neutral objectives and often matching where Contractz is making his presence known, knowing very well how CLG often wants to try and play these early games. Now on the top side, we've got Berserker and Zven into the eyes of Contractz with Blaber right through the riverside. Contractz retreating to his team of Luger and Poome.
Yeah, Contractz trying to sneak in there, but Blaber was tailing him right behind him, had to use his ultimate to get the knock up and speed up to get out of there. Does mean that C9 have control up in that top side of the map. We'll have to see where they end up choosing to use this Rift Herald. I assume accelerating Zeri is the play. Ooh, just barely spotted EMENES out there.
Yeah, Palafox, you can see in the way he was venturing towards that wave. Now explosive cast utilized the flash response by Palafox.
I respect it, Palafox. He tried to waddle his way out of there. The cask was pretty far behind him. I think there might be a flash read coming in from Fudge trying to throw the ult at a maximum distance, and I was worried that Palafox was going to be able to scoot his way out of there, but still got the knockback and then ultimately forced the flash. Nice little roam play by Fudge there.
And you can see that attempt as Berserker coming through, laying the damage and the silence from the Soraka here for the blast down onto Poome. Blaber in the vicinity, Cloud9 ushering this wave over towards the turret. Luger having a difficult time offsetting this pressure. Coming through with the ult from the Maokai. The route is good. Blaber in pursuit and the knockback to speed that kill through. Berserker taking it.
Nice little punish there by C9. The first off over aggression of CLG stepping up in the lane without having too much vision or control. The silence by Zven was great to get the initial kill, and then the sapling tag onto Luger for that one. Funneling the gold as well with the Rift Herald charge up to a 1,000 gold lead now for C9.
All right, Cloud9, we're already dominating the neutral objective game by taking that dragon and then making that way towards top for the Rift Herald, but now have swung the gold in their favor as well, pressing over 1,000 advantage at 11.5 minutes into the game.
Yeah, so here you see it, just the fact that they were able to just ghost, or ult on top of them with Berserker, the flash silence so that there's no ultimate from Poome. Luger here just needs to back off the turret realistically. He tries to greed out to clear the minion waves. During that time, Dhokla wanted to teleport back in. Looks like just a body slam interrupted it. Not the end of the world. There's Death Wit already come through from Luger, so he couldn't have stopped anything from happening there. Just does lose his teleport, unfortunately. And heads up play by Fudge, but the bigger thing is the fact that Luger greeted out under the turret, got tagged by the slow from the sapling, which leads to the Maokai ultimate. Gives some more gold in Zeri's pockets now, who's absolutely monstrously ahead.
And Cloud9 having that agency to take some confidence in the strength that Berserker can have on this pick later on regardless. Now being ahead with the bounty on the head, 2 kills into the pocket, farm up as well. Cloud9 have a surefire threat that is forming for their squad.
Yeah, I mean, on the surface level, this game actually looks relatively similar to Game 1 and Game 2. If I'm not mistaken, both times, C9. Dhokla has ult. He could go a little hamburgers if he wanted to, but he's being reserved. But yeah, both times C9 grabbed out, I believe, a 1 to 1.5k thousand gold lead for the first like 10, 20 minutes of the game before CLG started winning fights a little bit after that. And so in the sense, this is similar to that. The difference is, again, the scaling and where the gold is located for C9 on Berserker. But CLG has been very good in these dragon fights this series, and they're not afraid to take them.
Well, and with that in mind, starting up on it right now, and you can see Zven and Blaber over from the bot side, ready to collapse. Teleports coming in. Here's the unstoppable onslaught from downtown. Dhokla making his presence known, gets a knock up onto one, and it's the jungler at that, swinging it into the back line, and a death had by Blaber. CLG still on the rift. They back off into the jungle side, making sure that they just walk away with the victory over the jungler of the enemy.
All right, get the dragon here for CLG, get the kill as well. C9 setups have been looking a little sussy there, with the fact that you had teleport coming in from Fudge as EMENES was recalling, as the other rest of their team was split to the bot side of the map, so CLG just ult down there. I don't know. Oh, hold on, Luger.
Oh, the immediate flash away. Too much C9 on the bot side.
Ooh, that chunk out will get them more turret plates onto Berserker. Nice recovery after the dragon play, which was heavily in CLG's favor.
So Cloud9 continuous, not just throughout the series, but throughout the year thus far. Even if they lose out on an objective, they find somewhere else to apply that pressure, and that's on bot, making sure to rip that flash away from the enemy AD carry and continue to get some turrets as well. EMENES now, again, the subject of Palafox, as Poome is here for the assistance, offering that utility to Palafox, who has been trying its best to match up on this lane against EMENES.
Nice little chunk out, too, because EMENES did burn his teleport in that Drake situation. So getting some control, free farm for Palafox, some room for Poome as well to get some wards out. Nice little roam by him, who's done a good job, I think, kind of coordinating with Palafox this series, getting these little plays out, not all of them resulting in kills, but oftentimes helping get pressure and vision control out to contest C9 around objectives.
And if you really do want to have hope of walking away with a win, not just in this game, but the series, you do have to be as proactive as possible, even if it doesn't always result in a kill. Contractz zoning off against EMENES here with Berserker on the horizon, but I mean, CLG, we're talking about their matchups in playoffs last year against Cloud9 specifically, going the distance of 5 games. And when you think about the fact that this roster is the same as last year, it often comes after a championship victory or some big major run. And even though they were losses in those series, there was enough of a belief in this team to be had to run it back and make their way here again into the playoffs, now trying to clear off some of the map.
Trying to clear up some of the map, trading out the Herald for their own Dragon to funnel some more gold onto Luger, getting the Jinx ahead. Dhokla doing his best to play this weak side, but there's a lot of C9 members here.
Yeah, backing off of it. Blaber is keeping that lockdown, and Cloud9, they've got the Rift Herald already popped. They know that this life is for them to claim. Dhokla eliminated, passive popped, but the rest of the map, if you're taking a look, CLG trying to get a push there, so they don't have everybody here to be able to stand against a second Rift Herald charge if it is executed by Cloud9, and there's the crash.
Yep, they're able to find the kill. So sticky. Blaber just sitting on top of Dhokla, body blocking the ultimate, multiple smashes to knock him back. But like you said, they continued to funnel gold onto Luger, so actually a 2 turret for 1 trade in favor of CLG there. Accelerating Luger, who has fallen behind a fair amount in the farm, down about 30 CS after being shoved back multiple times in lane.
Oh, and thinking about the threat that Berserker is forming into for Cloud9, while Luger has not had as strong of a game thus far, still a threat that you will have to worry about eventually.
Yeah, but they do have the tools to deal with him. There's multiple engaged threats with obviously Contractz and Dhokla. If you're able to get on top of him, maybe Palafox can flash ult, you know, when he starts getting those insane AP ratios. We'll have to see how they want to deal with the Berserker problem. But to hop back to your point about CLG keeping their team together, I think it was especially interesting given the fact that I think summer split last year in the LCS was a bit of a wonky split where teams failed to live up to some of their potential. I think, you know, Team Liquid and 100 Thieves, these guys were struggling in the regular season. CLG finishing 4th was a surprise, and I think a lot of people thought was a fluke. And then coming into this split, where people were more excited about a lot of teams assembled with the FlyQuest, the new 100 Thieves, with the GOATs coming back together and all this stuff. The fact that CLG got 4th again this split in the regular season, I think shows the fact that they actually leveled up to keep pace. It's not just because you went 4th to 4th, it's the exact same thing. I think you have to look at the competition around them, and this team to get 4th, to surge in week 8, to go 3-0 against very difficult opponents that a lot of people did not have faith in them to actually even make playoffs, get all the way back to 4th, speaks to how good this team can be when they're actually firing on all cylinders. And today, they have been an inconsistent team, but today, they look like they are in some of their top form.
And it's honestly a bit of an inverse narrative compared to what many were establishing at the start of the season, figuring, oh, this is the roster that's brought together, so that means they should perform very well in the first round robin and then fall off as everyone catches up. So the utmost importance on that squad to understand what it means to do well in week 8 and come into playoffs off of all of the improvements they have made, keep pace with teams like Cloud9.
And here we go, Drake set up again. This time they have Palafox with the cage. They have a lot of tools to try and zone C9 out, and they're here first for CLG. C9 trying to work their way in as we have a split push from EMENES.
Seen again, a little bit of fish in the barrel with one lockdown, and Contractz going into the backline after a lot of damage thrown and the explosive cast for some separation. Teleport coming in through the line bush. Contractz marked down,
Berserker
still has a wild growth. And as Cloud9 decide to venture upon the rest of CLG, they are the ones surrounding the Dragon now, zoning off as much as possible with the damage output from Berserker with the ultimate activated. Dhokla trying to make that face at him as the tank. Another Event Horizon doesn't quite get the lock, but does get some zoning. A big blast of power onto Contractz. Contractz. So the jungler for CLG is kept at bay, and with that, Cloud9 take their second Drake of the game.
Touch and go there for C9, but they're able to absorb the initial engage by CLG. Palafox held his ultimate for a juicier target than Blaber. And the problem is, if you're focusing down Blaber, not only is he a tank, not only does he have Radiant Virtue and the passive to heal up, but you also have the Soraka. The extra heals that come in from there made it so that even though they chunked him out very hard initially, they just couldn't quite punch through his health bar. And if you don't do that, then that buys space for Berserker to run forward. CLG were able to disengage, so it ends up being no kills, but the Dragon goes in favor of CLG, or C9, excuse me, and the gold lead also went in favor of them as EMENES did finish off that turret in the top side.
And that first Dragon was a tricky pull away from Blaber to secure that second one off of that dance back from CLG and making sure that Contractz couldn't get in there. So 3.5k gold lead for Cloud9 as they approach 20 minutes with a Dragon up as well. And looking for some more engage over on this top side. Contractz going in onto Blaber, answers with the ultimate over the wall. Some laser comes through from Berserker, who's looking to land the damage where needed. Both teleports from both sides, but Blaber eliminated. Palafox with the first. EMENES zoned off by the rest of CLG, but Cloud9 keep their focus onto Dhokla. That is a big beefy Sion with the wild growth upon him as well, channeling up the Q for the knockup onto Fudge on this Gragas. So now CLG rotating over into the back of the pit. The polymorph onto one. Contractz into the back of the line, but look at all the low bars from CLG. Cloud9 venturing on backwards, losing 2 members, and CLG get their way in this fight.
CLG are doing it again. They are able to find individual members of C9 to focus down. This time, Palafox does commit the ultimate to finish off Blaber, and once he's down, it's a relatively easy split fight for them to choose someone. Almost got EMENES, forced his flash, and then Berserker thinks most of their cooldowns are down, it's time to go, but Contractz had never ulted, and the polymorph by Poome was huge, the combo of the CC, and then the Jinx rocket to finish him off. CLG find that fight to cut that gold lead in half, basically, after what was looking like C9 starting to make some good plays in this game. It's another scrappy game, Gabby.
It really is, and you love to see it, especially if you're a Cloud9 fan.
Yeah, so here it is. Blaber's gotten just a little bit over ahead of himself. That time, Zven was not in range to give him all those extra heals to keep him topped up, so they actually finish off Blaber there this time around. And then Dhokla zones 3 by himself, basically, while EMENES has to wrap all the way back around to try and find an angle. And, Berserker thinks, okay, this is the time to go. They're all starting to get low, but they still had so many cooldowns available that, Berserker just ends up getting exploded so quickly from the side of CLG.
And you could see how much damage CLG was taking there in those final moments as well, but they just stuck to their guns, and I think Dhokla doing a great job of playing that tank, sticking with the team, and absorbing so much of that aggro from Cloud9 and staying in it alongside what Poome is able to offer with his shielding and ultimate.
Yeah, it's such a crazy game to try and see how these team fights are going, who they want to focus down, how they're going to punch through. I was saying, how are you going to kill Berserker was the question I thought that CLG had to answer, but they're saying, well, we think we can actually just punch through front to back with our better front line and higher burst damage. If we can just blow somebody up at the start of a fight, it's hard for Berserker to actually start going resetting. Now they're going to use this pressure, grab mid-turret, start cutting this lead back into their favor even more.
The level of control that members of CLG are able to execute with to keep themselves in this too. I mean, Contractz getting a lot of love from social media just because of the way he was able to hold that ultimate to get the proper target.
He's another person that people are talking about maybe getting snubbed on the All-Pro. I mean, when CLG looks their best, it's often because Contractz is at the helm, leading that charge with early game ganks. He had a couple good ones this time around. Some really great flanks and team fights in all these games, honestly. So he has been in top form today, and I think it's showing here. He's going to be the only one who has like easy access onto the Zeri, and I think it'll be really important for him to kind of save his guaranteed lockdown for her so the rest of the team can combo. If you ult Blaber early or you're ulting EMENES, I'm not quite sure that that's as important. In that last fight you saw, Contractz had the right idea, able to make sure that once Zeri commits, he can finish her off and knock her up.
And he had that idea in mind during game 2 as well, and in some moments it worked out, but in latter fights where, Cloud9 could find a way to cut off Contractz access to Berserker, that's where it went the other way. So on the one hand, with CLG, yes, let's keep trying to get Berserker. Contractz doing a good job of it. Cloud9 is saying if we can make sure that Berserker stays up in one of these fights, he is known for his pop-off potential and being able to position expertly to output as much damage as possible in these games.
Dragon fight setup starting to come through. Good poke already landed onto Palafox by EMENES, put him down to half HP. Not where they want to be, and also being forced out of the chokes here. Palafox with his cage is incredible if he's able to get there first, but being shoved out, it's a little bit harder for them to buy space through these Maokai saplings, through the poke of Jayce. CLG trying to find their way in.
Cloud9 blocking off CLG upon the entry. So
Oh.
Dhokla turned back and then into it. Blaber way into the back after throwing down his ultimate, gets exhausted on the entry. Cloud9, they want to burn down Dhokla before they set their sights on the rest of the team. Even have the explosive cast to set the rest of CLG away. So Cloud9, they focus down the top laner at this fight.
Huge bait there by Berserker. Not 100% intentional, but stepping on the cage, getting tippered by it, still had his cleanse up to get over the wall when CLG say, hey, we stunned the Zeri, just go. I think they lost track of the fact that the cleanse was back available. C9 punish that over-engage, find the kill, get their third dragon. Consistent factor across all 3 games. C9's great control, able to get so many in their favor. Here you're gonna see it. Berserker caught in this like little choke point, trying to get damage out against Dhokla, gets caged up, and they think, oh, we can actually go here. You can see them, you know, try and all in on him, but Contractz and Dhokla both end up too far forward, and the Maokai ultimate tags multiple members of the backline by CLG, making it hard for them to kind of cover for Dhokla on the way out. The final cast by Fudge, making sure there's no way for Dhokla to survive that one.
So it's a weird game in the sense of, as I'm sure, being the only sacrificed life there, where CLG have had such strong stands and they're finding these proper target selections, but in the end, they lost out 3 dragons, the gold lead swinging back over for C9, even though they cut it in half at one point. Do you have hope that CLG can pull off some more plays with that isolation of Berserker? Or are we in the territory where Cloud9 feel comfortable in how they have been able to set up their bot laner?
Oh boy, it just feels like whoever executes better in that situation is going to win it. I think in that situation, you know, we talked about the overextension onto Berserker, too many resources committed, as well as the fact that they were shoved out of the river and had to go back mid. CLG has really struggled to break mid versus EMENES in his aggressive playstyle and strong picks. So this is another time where it's hard for them to really shove a wave in to open up these new angles because the mid turret's always up.
At 26 minutes into the game, basically, still standing strong enough for Cloud9 to have more agency when rotating across the map. But now it's the top side where some of the warding is being thrown down, as we're still over 3 minutes until the next dragon spawns, and Cloud9 in the riverside to get some of these controls ushered.
Yep, C9, I think this is another one of those cases where we talk about baiting Baron without much of an intention to really start it and try and burn it down. I think they want to corral CLG again for 3 minutes and then go for their sole point. They have to be a little careful there. Almost found an engage on the Poome.
Almost a close one, and not everybody here on the top side just yet. We have Dhokla and being matched there by EMENES over on the bot side. Teleports at the ready. Lots of Pope coming through as fighting over this vision.
Yep, C9 kind of defending their wards there. Still have pretty much complete control of the top side. Lots of wards out. CLG going to have to eventually face check that because this enemy team can do it very quickly. Jayce and Zeri are going to melt Baron whenever they decide to focus it down. So the fact that C9 has this control means that CLG can't just fall asleep at the wheel.
It'll take some time before CLG can break back into that and clear out the warding that C9 has established without putting themselves at too much risk. Fudge pushing the wave over on the top side, but yeah, Cloud9 right now being very tempered in their movement so they don't get caught out by CLG's potential collapse now that there's less vision on them.
Here's this Baron. They're going to have to force CLG to face check it. Body block on the rock to stop any vision from coming through.
It's already been burned down past half at this point. Cloud9 committing to it. CLG making the play. Contractz swinging away. Fudge out of golden on the opposite side of the pit, looking to throw it back, and with Baron now Barrett for Cloud9, they're hitting the go button onto the fight. Poome, wild growth and all, soon to fall. Palafox hits that stopwatch, and it hits a gray screen as Cloud9 collapse upon CLG. Flash over the wall by Dhokla, but the flash response mean that it is an ace coming through for Cloud9.
That's going to be game. Cloud9 able to show expert Baron control there, make it so difficult for CLG to fight their way into contest that the Baron's dead by the time CLG gets there, and then they're all scrambled around for C9 to pounce on top of, get the clean ace, answer back after dropping the previous game, gonna go up 2-1 in this series and be on match point.
Ooh, all of these games coming down to that single fight of dominance. Cloud9 finishing off another Nexus to pull ahead in the series.
Huge bounce back game for C9 there. Berserker on the Zeri, getting ahead early, being a force. EMENES having a lot of pressure. Blaber as well on the Maokai, providing that great front line. Really, really nice game out of Cloud9 there. A little dicey with some of the initial kills that CLG was able to get, but again, the objective control being so consistently in their favor, the Rift Heralds, the Dragons, and the Barons.
Yeah, I think when looking at some of those early plays that you were saying a bit dicey, you have to give props to Contractz and his way of isolating some of the targets on Cloud9, but there's a reason so many talk about Cloud9's control over Dragons throughout the season and their neutral objectives, and a lot of that comes from the teamwork that they have formed so well and being so intuitive and in tune with one another.
Yeah, I think they're a team that knows, like we were talking about in Game 1, how to adapt to the situations that are going on, you know, not getting isolated and blown up early on. So that was a situation where this game, they had that one bad fight kind of where Blaber got exploded at the start at the top. But other than that, most of them went in their favor when it was straight up 5v5 engages. They did a very good job of surviving any burst that could potentially come through from CLG. And Zven had a great game on the Soraka, continuing his Enchanter dominance. He's always looked so good on them. He's a bit of an unsung hero that game, keeping his front line topped off. They engaged in the top side where he silenced the Lulu. Like, there were a lot of plays by Zven that, if you go back and look at them, were actually pretty huge.
I know he loves when we talk about the Enchanter play and all the like for Zven, but for the CLG side, I mean, even looking at regathering their thoughts, regrouping ahead of the next game, it's game point mark for Cloud9. And that just puts a whole different mentality on it if you're on the CLG side. We're still in the upper bracket, so it's not elimination territory, but they've been there before when they feel like they've had really high highs in series but can't pull off the overall win.
No, I think CLG has been here a couple times before where the pressure's on. We'll see if they can bounce back. They'll be back on blue side. Blue side's 3-0 this series, if I'm not mistaken, so maybe that'll be their angle back in.
We'll have to see. We are also